"You're wrong, you foolish child," my dad sneered from across the courtroom, his eyes gleaming with greedy triumph. He was suing me for my own house, the home I bought with my hard-earned savings. Beside him, his expensive lawyer flashed a smug smile, entirely convinced that an isolated, defenseless woman stood no chance against their aggressive legal trap. I sat completely alone at my table, refusing to bring an attorney, which only made them mock me further. As the tension reached its peak, I remained completely calm. I stood up, walked to the bench, and silently placed my official military identification card and encrypted command credentials directly before the judge. The judge looked at them casually, but as she logged into the secure federal network and read my true service records, she froze. Her pen slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the desk. She slowly looked up, glaring at my father with absolute fury, and whispered, "Sir, do you have any idea who your daughter really is?" My name is Valerie Sanders, and at 32 years old, I finally know what it means to stand on my own 2 feet. Growing up, my home wasn't a sanctuary. It was a proving ground where I was always destined to lose. My father, a deeply controlling and emotionally cold man, made it clear that only one child mattered: my brother, his precious golden boy. To my father, I was nothing more than a disappointment, a foolish child who would never amount to anything or build a life worth respecting. The constant belittling chipped away at me until, at 18, I packed a single bag and walked away, choosing the grit and discipline of the military over his toxic shadow. For over a decade, I didn't look back. I endured the harshest training, climbed the ranks, and quietly built a career based on absolute precision. When I finally returned to my hometown as a civilian, I didn't seek their approval. Instead, I quietly used my hard-earned savings to purchase a beautiful, expansive piece of local property right under their noses. I wanted a peaceful sanctuary, a place to start fresh. But in a small town, secrets have a way of traveling fast. It didn't take long for my father and brother to realize that the daughter they had completely disowned and dismissed was back, and that I now held the deed to the exact piece of land they desperately wanted. It didn't take 48 hours for the vultures to circle. I was standing on my front porch, enjoying the quiet morning air, when a sleek, expensive car pulled into my gravel driveway. My father stepped out, followed closely by my brother. They didn't come to welcome me home, and they certainly didn't come to apologize for the decade of cold silence. Instead, their eyes swept over my newly acquired land with pure, unadulterated greed. They had recently discovered that their struggling family business expansion was entirely blocked unless they could secure my specific parcel of land. Assuming I was still that weak, impressionable 18-year-old girl who desperately craved their validation, they immediately went on the offensive. My father didn't even bother to ask how I was. He simply pulled a legal document from his jacket and demanded I sign the deed over to them, offering a pathetic fraction of what the property was worth. "Think of the family legacy, Valerie," my brother urged, his voice dripping with synthetic sympathy. When I calmly looked them in the eye and uttered a single word, "No," the mask dropped instantly. My father's face contorted with absolute rage. He stepped into my personal space, his eyes flashing with the same venomous contempt I remembered from my childhood. "You're still the same stubborn, foolish child," he sneered, jabbing a finger toward my chest. "We made you, and we can break you. I will take this house by force and leave you with absolutely nothing." True to his word, my father launched a vicious legal assault just 3 weeks later. I was served with a massive lawsuit that made my stomach twist, not out of fear, but out of sheer disgust. Using forged childhood agreements, fabricated family promises, and obscure local property loopholes, his high-priced attorney had built a predatory case to strip the deed right out of my hands. They were banking on the assumption that a lone woman with no corporate legal backing would fold under the immense pressure. When the day of the final hearing arrived, the atmosphere inside the courtroom was suffocating. My father and brother sat at their table, flanked by a team of aggressive, smiling lawyers who looked at me like I was already defeated. I walked in completely alone, carrying nothing but a simple digital tablet. I didn't hire an attorney, a detail that drew quiet scoffs and amused whispers from their side of the room. As the proceedings began, my father's lead lawyer took the podium, delivering a scathing opening argument. He painted me as a manipulative, ungrateful daughter who had abandoned her aging family for a decade, only to return and maliciously steal a vital piece of the family's land. He spoke with theatrical confidence, laying out their twisted evidence before the judge. Through it all, I sat entirely silent at my defense table, offering absolutely no objections or counter-arguments, letting their arrogance build to a fever pitch. The lawyer finally sat down, adjusting his cuffs with the smug satisfaction of a man who believed the trap was shut. The judge, an imposing woman with sharp eyes, looked down at me from the bench, her expression unreadable. Before we reach the final turning point of this day, I want to take a quick moment to thank everyone who has followed my journey so far. Please take a second to comment below with the city or country you are watching from. I love seeing how far my story has traveled across the world. Now, returning to that heavy silence in the courtroom, the judge adjusted her glasses and looked directly at my table. "Ms. Sanders," she said, her voice echoing off the wood panels, "you have no legal counsel present, and you have offered no defense against these claims. Do you have anything to submit before I make my final ruling?" My father leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs, and flashed a triumphant sneer, entirely convinced he had won. I stood up calmly, smoothing the front of my jacket. Without saying a single word, I walked down the center aisle, approached the bench, and placed my government-issued intelligence credentials and my official service numbers directly onto the podium. Stamped across the metal were federal markers denoting my active status. "Please log into the secure defense terminal, Your Honor," I said quietly. My father's lawyer let out a quiet, patronizing chuckle, but the judge ignored him, typing the security keys into her screen. The courtroom fell into a dead silence as the judge accessed the protected government network. At first, her expression was one of routine professional curiosity, but as her eyes scanned the top-tier military database, her entire posture shifted. She froze mid-movement. The heavy gold pen she had been holding slipped from her fingers, clattering loudly against the wooden desk before rolling to a permanent stop. My father's lawyer frowned, his smug smile faltering completely, while my father shifted uncomfortably in his seat, sensing the sudden, heavy shift in the room's tense atmosphere. The judge didn't say a word for 2 full minutes. She simply scrolled through page after page of my highly decorated top-secret history. What she was reading wasn't just a basic record of regular service. It was the blueprint of a specialized career handling high-level federal investigations, asset protection, and advanced anti-fraud operations for the highest echelons of the government. The official network explicitly detailed my rank, my active clearances, and my extensive legal authority to track, analyze, and completely dismantle complex corporate financial crimes. Slowly, the judge looked away from her screen and leaned forward, her face completely pale but her eyes burning with an intense, icy fury. She looked past me, fixing her gaze directly onto my trembling father, who was now visibly sweating under her fierce stare. "Sir," the judge said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, echoing whisper that cut through the room like a sharp knife. "Do you have any absolute idea who your daughter really is? You brought a team of high-priced corporate lawyers here today to bully what you thought was an isolated, defenseless woman, completely unaware that she currently possesses far more legal authority and federal investigative power than anyone else sitting in this entire court building today." My father's lawyer turned completely pale, his hands trembling as he stared at the judge. The supreme confidence that had filled their side of the room just moments ago vanished into thin air. I turned around slowly to face my father and brother, keeping my voice entirely calm and measured. "You thought I was ignoring your letters and phone calls because I was afraid," I said, my voice echoing clearly in the silent room. "But the truth is, while you were busy fabricating a baseless lawsuit to steal my home, my federal contacts and I were quietly conducting a thorough audit of your entire business history." I pressed a button on my digital tablet, instantly transferring an encrypted payload of data directly to the court's main display screen. This transmission contains ironclad, undeniable evidence of systemic financial fraud, tax evasion, and multiple instances of corporate forgery committed by the two of you over the last 5 years. The courtroom went so quiet you could hear a pin drop. My brother slumped back into his chair, looking physically ill, while their lead attorney closed his laptop, realizing with absolute horror that they had walked directly into a massive federal trap. The judge didn't hesitate for a single second. She slammed her gavel down with a resounding crack that made my father flinch. "This malicious lawsuit against Ms. Sanders is dismissed with prejudice," the judge announced, her voice ringing with absolute authority. "Furthermore, based on the highly credible federal evidence submitted here today, I am immediately forwarding these digital transcripts to the Department of Justice and ordering a full, unrestricted freeze and federal investigation into all assets tied to the Sanders family business. Court is adjourned." 3 months later, the dust has finally settled, and my beautiful home remains entirely secure. The peaceful sanctuary I worked so hard for is mine, and no one will ever try to take it from me again. My father and brother, however, are facing the ultimate ruin. The federal investigation stripped away their expensive cars, exposed their illegal schemes, and left their crumbling business in complete bankruptcy. They are now facing severe legal penalties, public humiliation, and the crushing weight of their own greed. Looking back, my time in the service taught me exactly how to play the long game against bullies, showing me that true strength lies in patience, precision, and standing up for what is rightfully yours. Now that you've heard my journey, I am deeply curious about your thoughts. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have fought back quietly like I did, or handled it differently? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice, I am leaving 2 other incredible videos on the final screen right now. They are channel favorites filled with massive twists that will definitely surprise you. Thank you so much for watching until the very end, and I will see you in the next story.